Hello and welcome to today's SCORE webinar, The Key Elements of a Successful Website Project. This webinar is being presented by Carrie Baskin, who is Managing Director at the Marketing Department and a SCORE volunteer. I'd like to thank Carrie for giving the time to present the topic, which all of you will find very informative and helpful. Before we get into the details of the topic, I would first like to provide you a little information about SCORE. My name is Adam Schubert, and I am a member of SCORE of Chester and Delaware counties. SCORE is a nonprofit organization that has been in existence for over 50 years. SCORE's mission is to foster a strong small business community by providing mentoring and education. We are here to support you and help you grow your business. SCORE is a resource partner of the Small Business Administration. SCORE is a national organization of over 10,000 volunteers serving clients throughout the U.S. We have over 100 volunteers here in the Chester and Delaware counties chapter. Before I turn the presentation over to Carrie, just a few logistical points. The webinar is being recorded, and the recording, along with the presentation and other reference materials from Carrie, will be made available to you after the webinar. You all have been placed on mute so we don't have any unnecessary disturbances. Carrie will pause periodically throughout his presentation to answer any questions you may have. Please enter your questions in the Q&A box at any time, and they will be addressed by Carrie. Please just wait a moment while I turn the presentation over to Carrie. Thank you.
Okay, am I coming through okay, Adam?
Yes, you're loud and clear.
Excellent, thank you. Well, Adam, thank you for taking the time to moderate tonight's presentation. I'm going to talk about the key elements of a successful website project, or this presentation could equally have been referred to as everything you need to know about a website project but forgot to ask, because we're going to cover a lot of different ground, a lot of different elements of it, and some of it, I'm sure, if you've never done a website project before, you didn't even know was something you needed to think about. As Adam said, I am the owner of a marketing agency in Malvern. We're a full service agency, and a big part of our business is working on websites. And I've been doing websites now for since 2011, and I've done quite a few number of them for all different kinds of clients and all different kinds of markets. And my goal tonight is really to kind of convey a lot of the insights and knowledge that I've developed over the years so that you can be a better informed consumer of a website development project. Okay. All right. So today's presentation is going to focus on the 5 elements that I've segmented into: plan, design, content, develop, and launch. There are 3 bonus slides at the back end of the presentation that we won't really probably have time to go through, but you might find useful and beneficial in the planning of your project down the road in the future for your business. But before we get into the actual presentation itself, I prepared a slide which speaks to what I call the website ecosystem, which really talks a little bit about understanding how it really works, right? You're sitting at your desk, you type in a website, in this case, in the illustration, tmdmalvern.com, and what happens? How does typing that into your browser suddenly result in you seeing a website page? So the first thing it starts with is your device. So you could be on a laptop, a tablet, a regular PC, or your cell phone. Each one of those devices has something called a unique IP address. IP stands for Internet Protocol. So the best way to think of it is a string of numbers, just like your phone number. And it is a unique identifier to your device in the same way that a telephone number is a unique identifier for your phone. So the second element of it is there's something called a router. So if you're the one that people are most familiar with and kind of see and feel and have a visual sense of, if you're a Comcast or Verizon user and you know you have that little box with a little yellow flashing light sitting on it next to your computer, that's your router. And it also has a unique IP address for that specific device. So your device says who you are, the router says where you are, and those two elements combined, it gets transmitted out over a massive, gigantic communications network, commonly known and referred to as the internet. So that address information, when you hit the send button, the enter key on your computer, searches out over the internet and looks for a domain name server that matches up with that domain name that you typed in there, tmdmalvern.com. So it's scouring the internet, looking for that server where that information is stored. And eventually it will find something called the domain name server, and it will look up the IP address of what the website's IP address is, because you're calling it, you're requesting to see that website on your computer. So we have to know where that website is being stored and housed so that we can deliver it. So it looks up that domain name and says, the IP address of this website is located at this set of string of numbers. And then it will send that out onto the internet and connect this search query with that specific server where your website pages are being stored. And it will say, I have a request to display the information that's on our website. So it'll peer into the database, grab the image, the files, the data, whatever information is being requested, and it will push it out back on to that communications network and return it to that router and browser where that initial request came from, and then display the pages on the device. And that's basically how the internet is functioning around your website and how information is being requested and then displayed. So the internet communications is free to the extent that, well, I guess you pay somebody to gain access to it through your router. And then the domain name is also being stored on a server. So there's some annual costs associated with a domain name. And then the website is being stored on another server. So there's some hosting fees associated with that. And if you're filling out a form on your website, you want to be able to communicate that data safely over the internet. So the network called HTTP is not a secure network. So you want to only transmit data on the HTTPS network so that whatever information you're sending, your email, your phone number, your name, if you're doing banking online or a credit card transaction, you don't want any of that data to be readable on the internet. So the SSL certificate, secure socket layer certificate, is the way that you're protecting that data, because the data is being scrambled and jumbled to an unreadable, unintelligible set of ones and zeros. And then on the receive side, it's being decoded and reconnected and reassembled into information. And that's how it's safely sent over the internet. And any device, any domain, you can tell they have an SSL certificate because you see this little safety lock that the browser has put up there and say, it's safe to send information from this website. So if you have a form on your website, you absolutely must have an SSL certificate on your site. So that's sort of how it all ecosystem works. So now we'll jump into the actual elements, and we're going to start off with talking about planning. So the first step in planning your website is to do your homework, right? Everybody has competitors. So you want to figure out, what are your competitors doing? So you want to search for them locally. And then for fun and curiosity, also when we do this kind of research for clients, we we'll search for websites that are not in the local market. So we might even say, you know, plumber in Los Angeles, plumber in Chicago, plumber in Milwaukee. And then we'll only look at the websites that come up in the top of the search result. The first one, the one that Google has ranked as the best website that satisfies that search query. And look at it, study it, see what's there. How many pages do they have? What pages do they have? What's their page listing, so to speak? How much content do they have on the website and on the pages? How are they doing branding and messaging in your industry and in your market? And what's the design look and feel of that website? All of these things will both give you ideas, but also create a baseline for, say, well, if I'm going to rank and get high up in a Google search, this is kind of what I need to put together for a website to rank really well. And then to always remember to search with synonyms, because different people will search for the same kind of service in different ways, like used car dealer and pre-owned car dealer really are the same exact business, but two different search terms resulting in that business result. Next up is to sort of have a vision of what you think this website should look like based on your research, the type of navigation, the type of photos. Are you trying to get very traditional or very modern with your design, the type of pages that you need? Just have, and the kind of look and feel that you're trying to create, you know, having looked at a dozen or more websites, you should have a good idea of what you're really looking for in a website design. And then determine what the goals are, because the developer will take different strategies depending on the goals. So, you know, an informational website that is really more of an online brochure that is just basically an informational based thing is quite different in terms of a website that is by design and by goal intended to convert prospects into leads. Or it's quite different if you're trying to do an online payment system through your website, or have some kind of custom functionality on your website, like have a calendar up there where people can register for events that you are running and such. So all of these different goals might have different design strategies, different development strategies, and development costs. So think about what kind of goals you're trying to achieve with the website before you have that first meeting with the developer. Next up is trying to understand what you want people to do on your website. The obvious one for almost any website that's out there is to learn about your product and services. But perhaps you want them to view a catalog, place an order, as I mentioned before, as an example, register for an event on the calendar, respond to different kind of offers and call to actions like fill out a form, make a donation, schedule an appointment, request a free evaluation. So have a good idea of what you want people to do once they are coming to the website. These days, chat is a real popular feature as well, or watching videos or download articles are really, really important for websites that are intended to be lead generation engines for your business. And then what kind of functionality do you need on the website? It could be things like a blog page, a contact form. You might want to integrate your Google reviews or your reviews on Facebook or on other third-party platforms. Maybe you're in the wedding business and you want to show the reviews that are showing up on the Knot and the Wedding Wire platforms. You want to be able to integrate those reviews onto your website pages. Maybe you're a chamber of commerce and you want to have a directory listing of all your members. Maybe you have a lot of rich kinds of content, or maybe you're an industrial manufacturing site with lots of different kinds of information on there and you want people to be able to search right through the site itself, like a Google search, but only searching what's on the back end of the database of the website. Maybe you have a business process that you want to integrate into your website, or lead forms, or any kind of payment processing, or learning management, or integrate with a CRM system like Salesforce.com or something like that. So have an idea of what kind of functionality you're looking for. Next up is to talk about the branding. So the first thing that you want to do with your website is to project your uniqueness. There's a lot of data out there that shows that for roughly 90% of interactions with a business, if the first time they see your business, 90% of the time, it's through your website. So you really have to think of your website as a personification of your brand, and protect and project it pretty quickly and instantly on the website. So being able to identify what your uniqueness is and create how you want to decide to create that emotional connection with the client when they hit that website for the first time. So the idea is to make it interesting, make it memorable, and make it informative. So I'll pause now. Adam, are there any questions in the question box there that anyone would like me to address?
Carrie, no questions at this time.
Okay.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, reminder, please post them in the Q&A box, and we'll take them on our next break.
Good. All right, and then I'll just keep moving along. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about the design, and really the design is really where the magic happens. It's really the heavy lifting for the website. There's generally more time spent in the design phase than any other part of the website development cycle. And it is where there is most interaction and communication between the developer and the client. One thing to keep in mind in today's world, there's a lot of focus on being ADA compliant with websites. So, you know, if you're particularly if you're in a consumer-based business, you definitely want to make sure that you're taking into consideration readability, accessibility of your website as part of the development process. And a big part of that is what you do with design. Before we jump too far into this phase, I want to just break down the elements of a website page. Fundamentally, there are two types of pages. There's a static page, so think of like the home page, the About Us page, a product or service page, the Contact Us page. These are all static pages on a website. And then we have dynamic pages like a blog post, and I'll show you some more examples of that. But the strategy behind those pages is the content or the information is changing all the time. The basic layout of a page is pretty standard across all website development projects. At the very top of the page, we have something called a header. And usually that's where the navigation and your logo goes, and maybe some contact information. Below the header is usually a featured image. Below the featured image is the featured content, and sometimes that is broken up into columns where you have a left sidebar and a right sidebar, and we'll show some examples of this in a few moments. And below all that is the footer, which is the bottom of the website. What's unique about the header and the footer is the header and footer appears on every page of your website, whereas the featured image and the featured content section is unique to every page of the website. So let's take a little deeper dive into a header. Oftentimes these days, the header has really two parts. The first is a colored bar at the top of the header, and it's just colored so that it's sort of separated and distinguished from the other portion of the header. It's just a design treatment. There's no functional reason other than making it easy to see the information that you want to put in the top of the header. And usually there you see things like social links, phone numbers, maybe a Google search feature for the website would be there. Sometimes a call to action button like donate now or schedule an appointment is oftentimes in the top row as well. And then in the main header section is always the logo, either centered like it is illustrated here, or generally left justified on the top of the header. Technically, it could be on the right-hand side, but the way websites render on smaller devices like your cell phone, when it starts to compress and shrink the page, it will take and start grabbing information from the left most part of the page. So if you put a logo all the way on the right, it will see the navigation buttons on a mobile device, and then it'll show the logo, which is not generally what people want to do. So usually you see the logo at the top or left justified, and then the navigation. And then as far as the navigation go, it shows how your content on the site is organized. It's very important that you try to make it as intuitive as possible. Use concise word descriptors to make it easy to understand what those pages are all about. If you have pull-down menus, which is fairly typical for a product or services page, and even oftentimes under the About page, but for product and services, you want to put the most profitable and most important pages at the top of the list. If they're all equally important or equally profitable, then you would use alphabetical organization to sort the list on there. And then you want to plan the navigation for both the visitor and the search engine. So intuitively, from a visitor point of view, you would want to have as many buttons across the top of the page as possible to make it easy to figure out where things are. But from a search engine point of view, actually, it is much better and more efficient for the search engines to have a fewer set of buttons so that the really important pages are narrowly focused under a few of the main navigation buttons. And I'll give you another example of that in a few moments. The other thing next is the featured image. So here's an opportunity to use a visual thing where human beings are very visual. They interpret visual images within seconds, and it can make a very visceral, emotional connection with somebody really in just a few seconds. So make the image choice a good one. It has been proven from a psychological point of view that it's better to use people than objects and places and things in it. But sometimes, depending on what your business is, showing an object of a place or a thing is appropriate. But if you have the opportunity to use people, use people. If you're another strategy behind that is just if the people are looking somewhere, make them either looking directly at the messaging or looking directly at the visitor so that there's a human connection there as part of the strategy. Also use the picture to support your tagline or your positioning statement strategy. So it should have some element with it. The Osteosarcoma Collaborative is about cancer, and the one at the top of the page is about in-home tutoring. So it's focusing on children as part of it. And then incorporate calls to action on the homepage photo or image as well. So in the case of the video, it's, watch it on YouTube. In the case of the cancer site, it's an opportunity to get involved or make a donation is the call to action. It's a proper strategy. People use it all the time. And you can use more than one photo if you want to. Best practice today is to use just one photo or a split screen strategy like you see at the top. It's less popular to see photos going on a slider where every 3 to 5 seconds the photo is changing with the messaging changing. And the reason for that is multifold. One is you're trying to deal with the fact that the attention span of humans on a home site, on a home page, is roughly the equivalent of that of a goldfish. So you have about 8 seconds to really draw them in, make a connection, and get them to make a decision to stay on the page and continue their search, or they're going to jump away. And multiple photographs are distracting, and they might not scroll down further to some of the core messaging that's on the main title of the page, particularly if the main photo is full screen, full width. and you got to scroll below the fold, so to speak, to see that headline title text, you might lose them. They might not hang around long enough for you to do that. So it's kind of best practice these days. The other reason for it is load time has become a critical factor for Google rankings of your website. And the more photos you have on the page, the longer the load time will be for the website page. So we try to reduce the amount of imagery that we're trying to queue up on the page, because these days you really want the website to load in under 2 seconds. And sliding photos kind of gets in the way of that strategy. It's best to use photos that you've taken yourself, particularly if you're like a doctor's office or a legal practice and stuff. Take photos of your interior, your team, your people, make it very engaging that way. But that's not always practical, and for some businesses, it's not even desirable. In that case, you would use stock photos that you can purchase. There are there are many free stock photo platforms out there, some paid and some for free. Unsplash and Pexels are 2 that we use for free photos, but we also will purchase photos. The 3 platforms that we use are listed there: Shutterstock, iStock, and Stock.Adobe. But there are dozens and dozens of these out there. One word of caution: never just search for an image of something in a Google search, because that will just create hundreds of potential images that will show up in the search result. But never use those on your website, because you do not know the licensing structure associated with those photos. And if you take one that you do not have the right to use, you can find yourself in a copyright infringement lawsuit, because there are bots that go out and search the internet looking for people who are using photos that are not theirs, and that are not free or have not been purchased. And an incident like that could cost you $5,000. So it's not something you ever want to do. Next up is the featured content that goes on the page. So that always starts out with the headline. I always encourage you to put the name of your company and then put a verb like provides or delivers or serves or develops or whatever is the proper action there, whatever it is that you produce, and then put a geographic attribute. If you are a local business looking for people in your local market, in this case it's Chester County, PA, but if you really get most of your business from within 4 or 5 miles and basically within your zip code, then the geographic attribute should be where you're located specifically, as opposed to where you're trying to sell to. So that's the strategy there. And incorporating in-home math tutoring is the keyword strategy for this business. So the heading should also include the keywords of what your product or service is associated with. And then we have body copy that we incorporate on the page. Could be text format and paragraph, but actually people scan, read, and skim website pages. So using bullet lists is also encouraged as a strategy for the page as well. Then we recommend that you put value propositions on the page. In this case, the client is presenting free offers in 2 places on the page. And then I talked before about a left and right sidebar. So here's 2 examples of a sidebar that's on the right and left side of the page. There's many reasons and ways that you can use this space. Content is one way. On the right-hand side, we see various forms of content that are kind of being mapped to the bottom, top, and middle of the sales funnel. So different kinds of content in different phases of the sales cycle. They all have a call to action button associated with them as a strategy to get people to interact. And then here's content buttons that are being used to answer questions with frequently asked questions, or in this case, providing pricing information. And then they're using icons here, emblems, to show the client a trust factor, that they're guaranteeing their results and that they've been, treated as best of businesses in recent years. So those are some examples of ways that you can use the sidebars. The footer generally has a logo and contact information in the first column. It doesn't have to be in the first column, but generally how it's done. A sitemap, which I'll talk some more about in a few minutes. And then some kind of engagement strategy like follow us. In this case, they're putting some icons on there to build trust, that saying that they're a member of an organization and that they're certified, and a form to actually create some engagement. But you could put other things on there, such as follow us buttons, donate buttons, volunteer buttons, your business hours, a map showing your region or your territory that you do business in. So lots of different strategies that you can use there. And the very, very bottom of the footer, you put usually your copyright statement. You always want to copyright your content on your website. And as a courtesy, you can allow your developer to put their name of the company that designed your website there. And then you also want to put your privacy policy, which could be either at the very bottom of the website as a link to the privacy policy page, or sometimes that's embedded and incorporated as part of the list of the sitemap. Either one is fine. And then we have the main navigation. So something kind of interesting here. The main navigation here is just 5 buttons: home, products, resource center, about, and contact us. So to look at this navigation element, you would never guess to realize that this website has more than 1,000 pages associated with it. But for usability and user friendliness, if you tried to organize the main navigation in a way that kind of paid attention to every one of the elements of this website's content structure, this would be a massive navigation environment. So instead, there's a highly organized architectural structure, or topology, if you will, of how the pages and the access to all of that content is structured on this website. So for the main navigation, for the products, for example, you can see here, there's a list that's broken down into 5 product categories. And within each product category, there's another sub list, but it's easy to see. You click one button, products, and I get to see the whole map of all the gantry cranes all at once. So again, it's all about easy to see, easy to navigate. And for websites that have layers like this, it's recommended that you use what's called breadcrumbs, where it shows you the sequence of steps that you've moused through to get to various parts of the website, with easy to understand and very descriptive names for the breadcrumb. And it's not a good idea to hide navigation behind what we call these hamburgers. They're becoming more and more common on websites, but they're useful and serve a good purpose on a mobile phone where you don't have a lot of screen space available. But for the main desktop version or the laptop version of the website, it's really not recommended to use them. Although some people do it because that's the design look that they're looking for. Always be consistent. So this navigation structure should be the same across every page of your website, and organized in a way that you could minimize the number of clicks and make it logical and intuitive. There's also other strategies that you can do for navigation. So here's an example of a dental practice in Phoenixville. It was a client that they have several different aspects of their dental practice that they provide clinical services for. So one path, if you will, is cosmetic dentistry, and they have several different practice areas that relate specifically to that. So this is a sidebar navigation that exists on the page. So every one of those individual pages, Invisalign, teeth, bridges, dental implants, etc., replicates this exact same on-page navigation sidebar menu. So you don't have to go back up into the big mega menu to switch between pages. You just go to the sidebar and just click. One mouse click takes you anywhere under the cosmetic dentistry services. So that's a very common practice. If you have a lot of different services or products within a category, it's a very nice way to organize the navigation for that. Another way to treat navigation, think of navigation, is to use what's called anchor text. So you can have a paragraph of text with series of keywords and then link those keywords to the respective page that you're talking about. And it can be on your website, on another page on your website, or on another page on someone else's website, which is sometimes a reason to do that. When you have anchor text like this, the search engines actually look at that anchor text structure, and it helps them map the content strategy that you're using on the website. So if this was a main page that introduced all of your services, and you had a paragraph of that, it's almost like creating a bullet list that says, here's all the pages associated with all of my services. It's a very common practice to do that, but it's very, very helpful for both the user and the search engine with that. If you're doing blog posts, another on-page navigation option is to do what's called categories. So you can create a category and flag or tag every post in a given category, and then allow people to click on that category, and then it will sort all the blogs that are associated with that category, most recent at the top and the older blogs further down the page. So it's a very nice approach. And if you have a huge quantity of blogs on your website, this is a website that has more than 50 blogs on it. So every page is actually paginated so that the visitor can cycle through one page at a time if they had a need to. Another thing to consider about page strategy is what kind of pages do you want on your website? So the obvious, home and contact us is the obvious ones, but even within the context of, well, about us can involve history, mission, team. You can have a board of directors that you might want to have on there, your management team, the why us stuff. You might want to have a careers page, either down as a sub-menu item or as a main menu item, etc. So there are lots and lots of different kinds of pages that you can have on your website. So when you're thinking about your strategy, think about what content and information you need to present on the website. But keep in mind, you want to kind of limit the number of main pages, which is this page type is the main one at the top, and then sub-page these in a way so that you don't have a huge main navigation menu bar structure going on. Organize it in some logical way. So let's just take a look at some of the features of these main pages. Homepage being obviously the most one. You have about 7 or 8 seconds to convey who you are and what you do, or why people should buy from you, or what makes you unique, or how you can help them solve their problem, or how you can help them in general. So there has to be some good text, bolded, focused, that addresses that, and it makes it easy to find and easy to see when you land on the page. The homepage should talk to your ideal customer. It's not a website for everybody. It's really a website for the clients that you're really trying to target in your business. Think of the homepage really more as a table of contents for everything that's on the inside of the website. So these, on where it says we guarantee results, and then you see this short paragraph with bolded keywords there. Actually, every one of those keywords is a link to the interior pages on the website. So all of this bolded text are really links to the interior pages. So the first 2 paragraphs is really mapping the table of content structure of this page, of this website. Make it easy for people to find out how to contact you from the home page, and then use headlines with the appropriate keywords, like I showed you before. So the About page is really a page about building trust, right? You're really showing clients who you are as a business and why they should do business with you, and how it relates to solving their problems in some respects. So what you do, what your mission is, your mission should be customer-centric, not we intend to dominate the market or things like that. It's really the mission in the context of the problems that you're solving for your customer and why they should buy from you, and then show them who your team is and kind of like the why us kind of details. Create a bullet list of 6 or 7 reasons why people should do business with you. The contact us page is to make it really, 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 really easy for people to communicate with you. So put a welcome note at the top of the page, a contact form so that they can reach out to you and collect contact information. Don't overdo the number of questions. So this is an example of one that has a lot of questions on it. If the client is early in their buying cycle, it's sometimes hard to get them to put a lot of information about themselves out freely. So you have to think about what fields you want on your form to be required fields. Usually name and email are 2, but sometimes phone numbers and other contact information might be included. You want to post up your hours that you're on your phone availability. And if it's a business that is a destination business where people can actually come to your office location or store location, then you want to put a Google map up there as well. If you're working out of your home and you don't want people to come to your house, then the strategy is just use your city and your zip code, not a street address. And that works quite fine as well. And that works well with the search engine. And then we can have services. So here's an example of a services page with a headline, a couple different headlines, some body copy, some call to actions, and a sidebar menu. This is a very typical website services page. And this is a typical product page where you're trying to use product photos as an example, and a bullet list of features and capabilities about that product, and then a call to action box to try to get the customer engaged. On the post page side, it's kind of dynamic. So examples of some dynamic pages are an events calendar page, a blog post page, or which also might incorporate an archive of podcasts or an archive of newsletters and such. And then we have what's called filtered content. This is an example of the cabinet site. So you're picking a number of different parameters, and that sortation, that filter presents a website page to you. So think about like the last time you flew on an airplane and you put information in there like the city of destination, where you're starting from, whether you want to fly direct or not, etc. You're putting a bunch of criteria in and it presents a page based on your filtering that you cited. And then finally, it's catalog pages is another form of post page. So that kind of wraps up our discussion on page types and such. Now I want to get a little bit into 2 things with font and color. So the big challenge with website development and font is basically coming up with using fonts that are interpretable and understood by the browser and the operating system. So not all browsers will interpret all fonts equally, and not all operating systems, because you have your desktop operating systems, you could be a Mac, you can be a PC, you can be an iPhone, you can be any one of the number of phone types that are out there, each having their own operating system. So there are many different kinds of operating systems and many different kinds of browsers like Chrome and Firefox and Edge, and etc. So the challenge is all of these browsers and operating systems don't interpret and present fonts exactly the same way. So for website development, you want to use something called web safe fonts. The list is pretty large, so it's not like you're restricted to just 1 or 2, but you want to use a web safe font. What happens if you don't, the browser will reformat the presentation of that font any way it wants to based on its own algorithm. So you might have had a design feature set up to look a certain way, and now it's not going to look that way because the browser rewrote the font the way it wanted to. So I provide for you a list of 32 web safe fonts, a blog post that lists them. So feel free to jump in there and take a look at what those are. You want to make sure that the fonts are not too small on website page. And then you want to make sure that the color and the contrast makes it readable, both from an accessibility point of view and just easy reading as well. And when you're laying in the content on your page, you want to make sure that you try to keep your character and line length basically to about 40 or 60 characters. And it doesn't matter whether you're using a serif or sans serif font. They're both quite fine and both quite readable. Color plays a really, really big impact on website design, and you can approach the color of your design from a number of different ways. One is the color palette, accent buttons, matching the color perhaps of your logo, and then using them as accent colors or as background colors on the site. You can have color by industry. So in the high-tech world, blue is very popular, but other industries like the osteosarcoma cancer, that sector of the industry is yellow is a big popular color for the cancer industry. Like the environmental, green and brown are very popular colors that are for those industries. So the logo brand expression, you might have a color design that you have in mind because the logo creates a particular emotion and you want to carry that through to the rest of the website. The user experience, color can influence and negatively impact user experience. Things could be hard to read, or things could be emphasized more on one page and another page, or a portion of the page could be emphasized with color, all intended to influence how the customer is experiencing the page. You can use color by call to action to influence behavior. Maybe you want to get a pop factor in a call to action button, so you make it big and bright and red, or etc. So that's another approach to color. And then you can have color by audience, right? If you're targeting a specific audience, if you're targeting people over age 65 who have likely to have some level of visual impairment, you might take a specific set of colors that, you're certainly not going to use a light gray font for the body copy if you're targeting a senior citizen audience, for example. And then color by the impact and impression you're trying to make. So color can influence all of these things. So you want to have a strategy in mind when you're picking your color scheme. There's at the bottom of the screen, I point you to a blog post that talks specifically about how the color is influencing colors in the website page. So I'll pause here. Are there any questions, Adam, that I need to address?
Yes, Kerry, I have one question for you. What website templates do you recommend?
That's a great question, and it actually is a perfect segue into not this section, but the next section after this. I'm going to talk explicitly about that. So I'll ask the question or two. Just hold that question off, and then I'm going to cover that on a couple of different slides in a couple of different ways. But that is actually a great question. But before we jump into the actual page design and website page strategies from that point of view, we'll talk a little bit about content, right? Content is anything on the website that is conveying information. So it could be blog posts, it could be articles, white papers, case studies, the on-page copy itself. It could be videos, podcasts. All of these things, all of these types of content are available to be usable on a website. But a common question I get asked all the time is, well, how much content do I need, right? Well, first and foremost, the answer to that is it depends on what you're doing in your marketplace, right? If you are building an informational website that, let's say you're a law practice and you're not really trying to get leads through the internet because people are searching for an attorney, but you want to make it possible for your clients to refer other people to you, and they refer to them basically by sending them to the website. That's a little bit different than content for generating leads. So, the answer there is, well, I need as many pages as I need to convey the information that I'm trying to communicate, and how I want the audience to engage with me. But a good solid informational website would have between 10 and 30 pages. The first page being, as we've talked before already, the home page is like a table of contents. The about page is about the content should deal with trust, and the contact us page should contain content of how you connect with you. The rest of the website is all about, really about informational structure, right? Articles, case studies, white papers, resource lists, blogs, videos, podcasts, whatever is needed and desired to do that. But in some respects, if you're trying to just be a referral online brochure website, it's as many pages as you need to communicate your brochure. If you're trying to engage the client in a way that you're converting people to leads, then it's also what pages does your competitor have, because you have to outperform them in a Google search ranking in order to come up high in the search result in order to get them to your website in the first place, right? And we know, mathematically speaking, the first 3 websites that show up in an organic search result garner about 55% of the clicks, right? So the goal is to get to the top of the search engine result page, and or at a minimum on page 1, because 96% of the clicks go to people on the page 1 of the search result. Only about 4% of the people will go to page 2. So you've got to get to page 1, and the content that you put on your website has to exceed or do better than your next closest competitor in your closest market. And so if it's a local business, it's kind of easy to figure that out. If you're a national business or a regional business and you're dealing with dozens of competitors, it's more challenging to figure out what that is. But there are software tools that we use in the industry to help us figure all that out, and figure out what's called your domain authority, which is not a Google ranking factor. It's a proprietary index that was created by a company called Moz. And it ranks your likelihood of coming up in a search result. And you can actually simulate what your domain authority is from a location search. So if I can say to the software, I'm searching from Philadelphia, what is this domain ranking, this domain authority from this website? So all that is determinable information, but that's what you'll have to figure out if you're really trying to make this a lead generation website. What's the content based on my competitors, and then figure out what people are searching online for, and then satisfy those search results. On the product and service side, the answer to the question is 1 page for each service or product type. So if you're a plumbing business and you install plumbing fixtures, you do clogged drains, you do repair of leaks, or any of those things, if those are individual services that you perform, then each of those services should have its own page, right? That's the way it should be done. And on the product side, exactly the same way. And the reason for that is, from an SEO point of view, each page should be dedicated to one topic per page, with 1 keyword set per page. So that's the strategy that you want to do there. And on the copy itself, you want to do, as I mentioned before, use synonyms or related search terms embedded into the copy, so that you are addressing the way people are searching for the product. And then how many words per page? Well, for a typical product or services page, we recommend a minimum of 300 words. For blog pages, minimum of 600, 800 to 1,000 would be better, but I'll put a cautionary note there. It depends on what your competitors are doing. If your competitors are writing blogs that are 1,200, 1,500 words, and you're writing a blog on the same topic for 600 words, it will never rank in a Google search and come up with the search results. So, the more authoritative articles that you can have on your website that covers the depth and breadth of the subject of your business, all the topics associated with your business, that's the way to have a winning strategy for a lead generation website. And never copy content or articles directly from someone else's website and put it on there, because Google's algorithm is so smart, so intelligent, that it will know that you did that and just basically ignore the content. So we talk a little bit about the on-page content, but there is some what I call in-your-face content. So when you land on pages, there should be some branded messaging going on here on every single page of your website that speaks to your unique selling proposition or your value proposition. There should be some in-your-face call to actions that encourage people to take a step, download something, read something, click on something, register for something, whatever it is. And every page should have a main headline that contains the keywords that you're promoting. And for the body copy that's on the page, it's really what information does your ideal customer need for their research, the who, what, when, where, why of your value and your products and services. And again, the homepage is a table of content page. And think about this, if you have several different products that you offer or several different services that you order, a very good strategy is to create a unique homepage that speaks specifically to introducing those several products or services in the same way that you use your homepage on a website to introduce all the pages in the website. Create a homepage for your products or services. Use anchor text with those keywords for the names of those products or services and link to them. That helps the search engine map the content structure of your product and services. And it makes it easy for your visitors to figure out, oh, this is all the things they do, and I can spot easily what I'm looking for and go to it. And then we like to say, feed visitors with content they can eat. EAT is a Google acronym for expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. So Google looks at the content that you're putting, all those articles that you put on your website, all those blogs. Google is looking at it from the perspective of its expertise, its authoritativeness, and its trustworthiness. And it factors that in to its algorithm analysis of whether or not to deliver it in search results. So I'll pause here. Any questions on the content side of things?
Carrie, no questions right now. Remember, if you have any questions for Carrie, please enter them on the Q&A page. Thank you.
So now I want to talk about the development stuff and really get into a little bit of the nitty-gritty of that. And development really has 4 elements that I'm going to talk about today. There's many layers to doing website development. But this is how I elected to break it down. So let's talk about staging. So staging means that your developer will install on a server your website operating environment called the content management system, a theme, and a page builder, which I'll talk some more about as we go down there, and create a child theme. So a child theme is kind of an abstract concept, but the best way I can describe it is if you install Microsoft Word on your computer, and then you create a document in Word, updating Word doesn't affect how that document information is contained, right? It doesn't compromise the copy that you put on the page. So it's kind of the same thing. The content management system on your website and the theme are things that could get updated periodically, but a child theme, basically, just like that Word document, just inherits the uniqueness of that file. The child theme will inherit the uniqueness of the design of the website. So if you're updating the CMS, you're updating the theme, or you're updating the page builder, it doesn't compromise the design elements that you've put on the page. So it's best practice to do that. And I've seen developers kind of skip that step and then create problems down the road on websites that we've inherited from other developers. Then you're going through the actual development process. So you have to build the pages based on the design that you've created at the beginning of the phase, add all that functionality, build the forums, add all the anchor text, upload all the copy that you want, upload and deploy all the images and videos and podcasts, etc. Create and add all the meta tags. So the meta tag is the title tag that tells the search engine what the topic of this page of the website is about, and the meta description, which is those few lines of text that describes what you're saying when you come up in a search result. So if your website page comes up in a search result, It has the URL navigation, the URL name, and then the page name, the title tag, and then 2 or 3 lines of text that is the meta description. So you have to write all that for the page, and then do your testing of all of the website, and then add in your privacy policy. Privacy policy is now basically a legal requirement because in 2018, the European Union created a privacy law called General Data Protection Regulation. So it's not a standard anymore. It used to be that privacy was like a best practice, but now in the European Union, it's a regulation. And if you're in violation of that regulation, you can be criminally prosecuted. And in the United States, you have California has a Privacy Act law, and several states have followed suit. So you can now actually be sued for violating privacy policy on your website. So it's now really a requirement that it should be there. And it's not something that's done by the developer. You have to engage an attorney to write your policy privacy document and then hand it off to the developer to add to the website. And then another nice thing about a staging environment is it is a website on a server, and it is accessible from a URL link. So it is technically on the internet, but it's not launched yet because nobody who doesn't have access with that URL link can actually access that website. So it's not there for the world to see. It's just there for you and the developer to access and see. Now I want to talk about the builder side of it, okay? So this addresses that question that came up in the Q&A box a little bit earlier. So there are really 3 strategies. We're going to talk about 2. The third one that we're not going to talk about is a true custom website programmed in HTML or some other programming language like Python or Windows, C+, or whatever. Those are really custom, highly custom website development projects and not generally done in the general population. There's always, if you have a special reason for doing that, which in some cases, in some businesses they do, that's the approach you take. But the preponderance of websites that are built out there follow one of these 2 strategies. The first one is what I call a proprietary do-it-yourself configurable page builder on a hosted platform. And the hosted platform is usually up in the cloud somewhere. So some of the popular ones that are out there are like Wix, Weebly, GoDaddy, and dozens more of them. And they range from free to a couple $100 a year to use, so they're relatively low cost. Cautionary note here, if they're free, then you're basically giving the website builder platform permission to display ads of another company's business on your website. So it's not something you'd really want, so I would never encourage anybody to use the free platform. Just use the paid version of it. And it is low cost. Usually you get a free security certificate with it. If you're comfortable around things like Microsoft Word and Excel and PowerPoint slide creation, then you have enough skill to create a page with their building tools. And most of these sites have pre-built templates that you can start from. The disadvantage are they are limited functionality and a limited ability to add functionality, a limited design control. You can't do everything you want. You can only do what the platform allows you to do. Sometimes they limit the amount of memory, the size of your website, and in some cases you have absolutely no access to the code, the programming code, and no ability to optimize for what's called technical SEO. And the website is not transportable. So if you spend time and money and effort to invest in the website on these platforms, you can't transport them and move them to a competitor. You're sort of stuck with it. And in the e-commerce space, there are also some DIY platforms that are out there. But in the e-commerce space, they're also more flexible in terms of some of the things you can do. You do have some access to the programming code on the back end here, so you can hire a developer to kind of take it to the next level if you want to. And they also have some pre-built templates as well that are there. But these have medium to high costs associated with them, up to a couple of thousands of dollars a year to use some of these platforms, and many, many thousands. A BigCommerce website could cost you $50,000, $60,000 a year to hire a developer to create a really formal e-commerce platform. And if your business is big enough to warrant something like that and appropriate for your business, then it's something you would do. The second option is to use what's called open source website content management system. The most popular and commonly used one is one by WordPress. Roughly 750 million websites are built on website out of 1.8 billion websites that are out there. And it overcomes all of the disadvantages of the DIY sites. You have complete control of everything, right? First of all, there's no license fee to use WordPress. It's an open source platform. So it's free to use. It's incredibly flexible, but with flexibility oftentimes comes complexity. So they're more difficult to develop than the DIY sites. But you have complete freedom to modify and extend. There are literally thousands of plugins. Plugins is an app. So there's an app for that kind of thing. So there are literally thousands of plugins that have been developed for the WordPress platform. It's full control of design, programming, and functionality. And it has tools and backend access for SEO. And it's portable. You own it. So if you don't want to stay on whatever brand of hosting platform you're on now and you want to move it to somewhere else, or your own personal server, if you have a server farm of your own and an IT department and you're managing your own servers, you can bring it into your own environment. It's completely portable. And another bullet point that I probably should have added is because there are hundreds of millions of websites using WordPress, there is a community of developers in the hundreds of thousands of developers out there who you can go to get work done for you on this platform. The disadvantages, it is more complicated to develop, and it have some costs. Usually a typical website starts at a couple of $1,000s, and there's some annual hosting costs in a few $100s a year range, and you have to maintain it because it is an open source platform. It does need to be maintained with periodic maintenance. The other platforms like Joomla and Drupal are also well known and used, and those platforms are very, very common in what I call big enterprise environments. So if you're like a Staples and you've got 1,500 store locations around the country, and you want to have a website that will have a website page dedicated to each store location, then Joomla and Drupal are platforms that you would use because they are structured for that kind of environment. So you tend to see big enterprise companies using them. I believe Score's website runs on one of those platforms as well, because we have hundreds of chapters around the country, and each one of those chapters has some pages dedicated, a website page is dedicated to the individual chapter. Squarespace is another platform that's kind of growing in some popularity. That kind of fits. It's like a hybrid between the DIY, but it is an open source platform. And WooCommerce is owned by WordPress and powers roughly 1/4 of all the e-commerce websites in the world. So it's very, very commonly used, and again, highly supported with lots of extendable applications that you can add on to it, like calculate your tax calculation, shipping plugins, so you can set up shipping manifests and keep track of your inventory, and all kinds of other features that you would expect of any e-commerce site are also available through the WooCommerce platform. So which one do you use? DIY or budget or this type of approach really depends on your budget, your skill, your objective behind the website and such. We do, I would say 95, over the 10 years we've been doing this, I would say 97% of the websites that we've worked on were all WordPress websites. But occasionally we do get asked to help clients with some of the DIY solutions as well. If you're going with a WordPress type website, website strategy, then you can, if you know HTML programming or Python programming or any of the real programming languages, you can natively program a website using pure programming languages. But most websites today are built with page builders or theme builders because they behave a lot like DIY strategy. So a lot of drag and drop interface, hundreds or literally thousands of pre-built themes that are available through these various platforms. There are hundreds of Divi pre-built ones and Elementor ones that you can choose from. For example, which are the two brands that we use on our development efforts. And so they sit somewhere between the simplicity of DIY and the complexity of, a native programmer kind of feel. I have not taken any programming. I'm not a programmer, but I have built website pages using Divi and Elementor, a builder. So if you have a little bit more advanced skills are required than the pure DIY strategy, because again, WordPress is enormously flexible where you can do virtually anything with your design. Put something on the page anywhere and have it behave any way that you want, any color, any font, any position, any functionality that you want. So with that added flexibility comes, a more complicated DIY environment, but you do not have to, do not have to know anything about HTML programming to build a website page with these builders. And they're not overly expensive. They run either from free to a couple of $100 a year. Some of these builders are one-time payments and such, but they do fill the gap between a true custom website and something proprietary. And these builders expand on all the functionality that you can do within a WordPress environment. So you don't give up anything really to use these builders. And we like them. And it's incredible the number of websites that are really built in these platforms is preponderance. And the Gutenberg one is the one that WordPress has created. It's on a comparative basis, it's relatively new to many of the other builders. It came on the scene in 2018, so it has many levels of functionality, but it is a little bit more complex to use than some of the other ones that are out there. So I hope that answered the question for the building type strategy that I'm recommending. And the other thing I want to mention from a development side, because this is really something that the developer would do, is the sitemap. So a sitemap is something that sits down in the footer of the website. It's just a list of pages. You can do it as a top level list like the one on the left in the light gray, or you can use indented and actually show all the sub menu pages within a sitemap as well. So it's really for the visitor who's coming to the website to see what's there. The other kind of website, an XML site, is really for the search engine. It tells the search engine what pages you have on your website, and algorithmically it will determine which ones are most important. So this line of snippets of code would exist for every page. It doesn't come out of the box. It has to be added by the developer as part of the development process. And then next phase is testing. So you have to make sure that the website will render on all browsers, that it will render on mobile devices, that all the links that you have on anchor text and buttons are working, that all the forms are submitting the data, and that the website will load in under 2 seconds, and check that the images have the final URL and that all the images have been purchased. So I think I'll pause now and ask if there's any new questions to address.
Yes, and you may have partially answered this already in your presentation, but what are your thoughts about WordPress as a CMS and themes?
Well, clearly there's a lot of advantages to it. We, as a marketing agency who's providing services to clients, We love it because its flexibility lets us basically satisfy any need the client might have. I was talking to a prospect the other day who they are a junk removal company, and some of the junk that they remove is usable furniture and usable office furniture and stuff. So they put it in a warehouse and want to sell it. But they also have a strategy that if it doesn't sell within a certain amount of time, they donate it to charitable causes, right? So they have a back end. They want the back end of the website to say, it's almost like a catalog website. I'm going to put this new couch in the catalog. If it doesn't sell within 30 days, I want it to automatically remove itself from the catalog and then present it to the nonprofits that we have in our Rolodex, so to speak. And I said, okay, let me investigate that. And sure enough, there's an app for that you can add to WordPress that will deliver that functionality. So we love it because of its flexibility. We like it because the WordPress itself is free to use, so there's no licensing fees that we have to add on, just the fees that are associated with the builder. We like it because there are tens of thousands of developers out there, so I don't ever have difficulty finding people to do the development work that needs to be done. Hiring resources becomes really easy. And there are plenty of tools out there that make it easy to develop it, like all these builders and stuff. So we think the right investment for any business is a WordPress website. Unless you're a franchise, then I would say look at Drupal or the other one that's really popular for websites that have to run across hundreds or many site locations as well. Okay, the last phase of a development cycle is let's make it live. Let's launch this thing. Okay, so that involves transferring the files from the staging server to the final hosting server. And in order to do that, we have to purchase a website hosting service for you, for the client. We want to make sure we replace all the watermarked stock photos that were purchased with the purchased version. We want to install it on the production server. We want to install the SSL certificate. We want to install Google Analytics, and we want to update the admin test email account that we were using to test all the forms to the client's actual email that they want the form data to flow to. And then we want to configure the URL. What I mean by that is people will sometimes search www.companyname.com, or sometimes I'll just type in companyname.com. Well, those are two different structures of the same URL, and you actually have to do some things at the server level to make sure that it will come up and be recognized as your domain. And then if this is a website that is replacing an existing website and the page names, remember that if the URL of that subpage is like company www.com/about-us is the name of the page now. But on the old website, it was www.com company name/about. Well, that's a different URL. So if you're changing the URL between the old website and new website, what you want to do is do what's called a 301 redirect, which is think of it like from a telephone point of view, like permanent call forwarding. You're permanently forwarding that old URL to the new URL. And that's really important because a Google ranking factor is the longevity of your URL, your domain name. So you want to make sure that all this equity that you've built up with Google on the old website is transferred to the new website. So all that redirecting has to take place as part of this process. And then because you've moved the website from one server to a different server, you have to retest everything again. You got to make sure that things are still working the way they were supposed to work and the way they were working when you were developing it. All that testing has to be done all over again. And then there's some housekeeping. You want to tell the search engine that you're live on the internet. On a WordPress website, there's actually a checkbox that you use So when you're developing a website, you actually check a box that says, tell the search engine not to index this website. And generally speaking, Google respects that. But when you want to take the website live, you want to uncheck the box. And I've had people come to me and say, Carrie, my website is 2 years old and I've never gotten a lead from it. I don't understand it. Why is that? And you log into the back end of the website and you find that nobody ever unchecked the box. So search engines weren't really indexing the pages. So the best way to check to see what Google knows about your website is to just type in the browser search box, just type site : www.companyname.com, and the search result should be every page that Google has ever indexed on your website. And then you can see whether you're in their index or not. And then from another housekeeping is go add your website business listing to all your business listing, go to your Google My Business account and update it, add it to your social sites, etc. And then tell everyone you know, hey, I've got a website. Also, post-launch is you really want to have a maintenance plan. And you need to think about how frequently you're going to do this. Are you going to do it in some continuous mode with like a managed hosting strategy where the hosting platform is updating some parts of the website, but not all? And there's some pros and cons to that strategy, which I don't really have time to go over right now, but generally speaking, we have to update WordPress, the theme, and all the plugin apps that you've installed on the website. And typically, an average website may have anywhere from 6 to a dozen plugin apps that are used on the website. So all of those have to be maintained. So there are hosting packages that will manage only update WordPress, but not the theme or the plugin. And that's a dangerous problem because if they get out of sync, it could break the site. So if you're going to go manage hosting, make sure that the hosting company is updating all elements, or you can just manually update the site. We recommend clients do monthly updates, quarterly if they can't afford it, annually, worst case scenario. But in addition to maintenance on the site, you have to maintain renewals because you're paying annual fees for website hosting and domains and SSL certificate and any plugin licenses that might have been purchased. Sometimes we use free plugins, sometimes we have to pay for them. So you don't want these things to lapse, so you want to set to auto renew, but even that needs monitoring because if the credit card on the account passes its expiration date and it tries to renew these things, it will break. And so you need to make sure that the admin email that's on your hosting account is an email that you're you're monitoring, and will be notified if you're up for renewal on any of these things. So you should get renewal notices, and then you should get renewal verifications with a credit card receipt. And if you're renewing and you say, oh, wait a minute, I think I might have an old credit card on the account, you better go in and check that. And then you want to maintain your privacy policy. You might change the rules by which you're operating your privacy on, and you also want to, if your privacy policy says we are not going to store any records in our website for more than a year, then you need to go in there and purge your database and get rid of the records you said you weren't going to keep. Or if someone comes to you and says, I want to unsubscribe, okay, then you have to, by the rules of the policy regulations, you have to go in and remove them from the website. And you may want to even update your privacy policy from time to time because these are no laws and the laws are changing all the time. And the other thing to keep in mind is websites are never done. They're never done for a number of reasons. One is your competition is always evolving. And so there you definitely want to keep up with the Joneses, right? So you don't want your website to fall behind. You might want to, your business itself is evolving. You might be adding new products, new features, new capabilities to the marketplace, and you certainly want to highlight them on the website. You might be, your teams might be changing. You might be adding people. People might be leaving the business, so you might have to continually update your teams as well. You might want to add new functionality or business processes to leverage the website and get a better return on investment for the use of the website. And search engine optimization, you can't build a website and be search engine optimized. Search engine optimization is a process, it's not an event. So there are things that you have to do over time to improve the rankings of your website page in search results. And you might be wanting to blog frequently and add content frequently. So the website is never done. And then there is a phrase that came from a Field of Dreams movie, that build it and they will come. Well, that doesn't work with websites. With websites, you actually have to market it. And you have to figure out what strategy you're going to do with that. Internet marketing, inbound, which is a form of content marketing, traditional outbound marketing like radio, TV, print, direct mail, email campaigns, or search engine optimization in concert with your content inbound marketing strategy as a way to drive traffic to your website. But it won't happen passively. It has to be proactive. And then finally, I mentioned as one of the things to do that you should ask your developer to do is to install Google Analytics to your website. It's a free piece of software that is available to anyone that wants it. And with Google Analytics, you can get an enormous amount of insights into how your website is performing, what pages people are viewing, how many people are coming to your website, are they coming from desktops or mobile or tablets. You can set up marketing campaigns on the back end of Google and actually see how well those campaigns are doing. You can see what content, what pages on your website are most popular. You can track the flow of the movement of people throughout your website, where they might start out on the homepage, and you can see, okay, where do they go from the homepage? Where is the most popular? What is the most popular second page of my website? What's the most common web page that people leave my website, etc. How much time are they spending on a page, etc. So these are insights that you can get from it, especially also where are they coming from? Is it a direct? Direct means are someone typed in your domain name and that's how they got there, or did it come from a search or from a paid search, or was it referred from like a referral site like Facebook or something like that? And other might be like a Google My Business or a Google Map is another way that people can get to your website. So if you've invested all this money and time and effort into your website, then take the time, spend a little bit of time figuring out how it's behaving and how it's working for you, and see if it's meeting your goals. Because remember, in the first or second slide that we talked about is every website project should have a set of goals. And the amount of traffic that you want to come to your website could be a goal, or the number of leads that you're generating from the website could be a goal. And Google Analytics will help you analyze how that's doing. Any questions on this section?
No further questions at this time, Gary.
Okay. So again, there are some bonus slides in here on return on investment. I show you how to calculate a return on investment and give you some tips and hints for the SEO that you should be engaging with your developer and discussing with your developer. And remember that it takes a village to build a website. I sort of outlined sort of the key players, the key vendor strategies, and the outsourced services that you might typically utilize with that. And if some questions come to mind in the future, my contact information is here. I'm happy to, pause and reach out and connect with you and answer any questions that I can. My goal is to serve the community, and this is one way that I do that. So. And if there are any new questions out there, let me know what they are.
Okay, so I'm not seeing any further questions. So Carrie, if you could turn control back to me.
Sure.
I'll show our final slides.
Got it.
And just a moment. So I'd like to thank Carrie for all the great information he gave to us today. I'm sure everyone here has learned quite a bit of great information on how to establish and manage their websites. As mentioned earlier, you will all receive a presentation deck and the link to the recording from this webinar. Our volunteers at SCORE are experienced business people who want to help you start and grow your businesses. All the mentoring we provide is free of charge and totally confidential. And almost all our education programs are free as well. Over this past year, SCORE of Chester and Delaware counties have provided helpful services to over 800 clients with over 2,200 mentoring hours and 100 local webinars. In addition, over 600 attendees from our counties have attended educational programs offered by SCORE National. Mentoring and professional education is the very core of our services to entrepreneurs and small business owners. If you aren't already working with a mentor, you can request one by going to our website, chesterdelcoscore.org, or by calling the phone number listed here on the screen. Before we wrap up, it's just a reminder there are many resources available from SCORE, and almost all of it is free. Experience mentoring, webinars, tools, and templates where we are allowed to safely meet together in-person seminars and workshops. On the screen is information on how to reach us. Before everyone leaves, we'd appreciate it if you could respond to the poll, which I will put up momentarily. Here we go. And thank you again for your attendance at today's session, and hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.